On the pasuk Vayihi ben Sayarin Vayomer Moshe, as the Aron traveled, Moshe says, "Kuma Hashem, arise Hashem, v'yafutzu oivecha, your enemies should scatter, v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha, those that hate you should flee from before you." Rashi explains, "V'yafutzu oivecha, hamechunasin, those that are gathered, they will scatter. V'yanusu misanecha, those that hate you will run away. Elu haroitvim, these are the ones that are chasing after you." Now, simply what Rashi is dealing with over here is a double expression in the pasuk. V'yafutzu oivecha v'yanusu misanecha. So Rashi is telling us they were dealing with two groups. There are v'yafutzu oivecha, is those that were gathered together, they will scatter, and v'yanusu misanecha is those that were chasing after you. Instead of them chasing after you, they're going to run away from before you. They're going to flee. The Rebbe is focused over here on a diuk. The Rebbe calls it a diuk boiler, an obvious difference in the wording of Rashi. That by v'yafutzu oivecha, Rashi just says the word hamechunasin, those that are gathered. But by v'yanusu misanecha, Rashi adds the word elu haroitvim, these are the ones that are roitvim, that are chasing after you. Then the Rebbe moves on to the next Rashi. Rashi quotes again the word misanecha and explains, Elu soine Yisrael, these are the ones that hate the Yidden. Shekola soine es Yisrael, anyone that hates the Yidden. Soine hates es misha amar v'yoylam, the Eibishter who with his words created the world. Rashi brings a pasuk, Shenemaru misanecha nosuresh, those that hate you, referring to hating Hashem, have lifted their heads. And who is this referring to? The pasuk goes on to say, Al amcha yarimu soid, those that are plotting against the Yidden. Now, simply what Rashi is coming to deal with over here, since the pasuk is speaking about those that are waging war against the Yidden, so why are they called misanecha, those that hate you, Hashem? So Rashi is explaining, anyone that hates the Yidden hates Hashem. But the question is, this very, very issue should have been mentioned by Rashi on the words just before that in the pasuk, on the words v'yafutzu oivecha. The same question could be asked: who are the enemies of Hashem? So why is Rashi saying this only on the following words, v'yanusu misanecha? So some Mefarshim want to say, because the pasuk that Rashi brings, misanecha nasu roish, those that hate you have lifted their heads, is dealing with the word sinah, misanecha, like our pasuk misanecha. So Rashi brings it on v'yanusu misanecha. And he doesn't have a proof, so to speak, for the word oivecha, that an enemy of Hashem is the ones that are the enemies of the Yidden. But this answer is very problematic, because that very same pasuk has the words Kihine oivecha yehemoyun, referring to the enemies of Hashem. And not only that, Rashi specifically brings that very pasuk, that very part of the pasuk Kihine oivecha yehemoyun, earlier on in Oz Yashir, where the pasuk says Taris kamecha, you should destroy all of those that stand up against you. Rashi says, who are the ones that stand up against Hashem? So Rashi brings this same idea, this pasuk, and Rashi brings that part of the pasuk, and he says that those that are plotting against the Yidden are considered the enemies of Hashem, getting up against Hashem. Says the Rebbe, so we must say that the reason why Rashi over here in our pasuk is not bringing it on v'yafutzu oivecha must be because Rashi is actually relying on what he told us already in Oz Yashir, that the enemies of Hashem means the enemies of the Yidden. But if that's the case, why does Rashi have to explain it on the words v'yanusu misanecha? The same logic applies now to the next words, that who are the ones that hate Hashem? Those that hate the Yidden. The Rebbe discusses a number of other diyukim in this Rashi, as well as some comparisons between the Rashi here and the Rashi in Oz Yashir. But one point I'm just going to mention right now is that the Rebbe asks, why is Rashi's expression Soines Misha Omar V'Hoya Olam, hates the one who with his words created the world? Why not Soines HaKadosh Baruch Hu or Soines HaMakom, or something similar to that? Says the Rebbe, the explanation of all of this is by first looking a little bit more carefully again in the wording of Rashi in our parsha, that there is a major difference between Rashi's wording and the Sifri, who's the source of Rashi. In the Sifri, it says anyone that hates the Yidden is ke'ilu, it's as if he hates Hashem. Rashi says anyone that hates the Yidden hates Hashem. In other words, Rashi is learning that it's not as when someone hates the Yid, it's as severe, as terrible as hating Hashem, but rather Rashi is saying it's actually one and the same. You hate the Yidden, you hate Hashem. Similarly, in Oz Yashir, on Taris Kamecha, Rashi says, who is the ones that stand up against Hashem? Those that stand up against the Yidden. Again, Rashi is saying it differently to the Mechilta, who in that case is the source of that Rashi, which says anyone that stands up against Hashem, it says it's anyone that stands up against the Yidden, it says if standing up against Hashem. Because again, according to Rashi, it's one and the same. Nevertheless, says the Rebbe, there's still a difference between what's called Oivecha, those that are the enemies of Hashem, and Misanecha, those that hate Hashem. And it's for this reason that although For the words v'yafutzu oivecha, Rashi did not have to explain who are the enemies of Hashem, because Rashi had explained this point already in Oz Yashir, but it's still not sufficient for misanecha to say who is the one that hates Hashem. Because as the Rebbe is about to explain, this type of sinah, the hate that we're speaking over here, seemingly does not make sense that a human being could even have that towards Hashem. The Rebbe says, what's the difference between oyev and soinei? The Rebbe says, oyev means someone that's practically acting in a way of hate towards another person, doing something practically against the other person. Soinei, on the other hand, is mainly a deep emotion in the heart, a very, very deep hatred to the other person. And it's so deep that it's not only that he's practically doing things, but he's constantly looking how to harm the other person, how to do something terrible to the other person, and so on. Says the Rebbe, based on this, we'll first understand Rashi's words, which we asked in the beginning of the Sikha, where for your enemies will scatter. Rashi just says Hamuchunos, and those that are gathered. By V'yanusu misanecha, those that hate you will run away. Eilu haroitim, these are the ones that are chasing. The Rebbe explains, V'yafutzu oivecha, when we say V'yafutzu oivecha means those that are gathered, it's not that we're saying that automatically an oyev, an enemy, is always going to be gathered together. Because practically a war can happen in many, many different ways. Sometimes the enemy can be gathered, sometimes they're not gathered, etc. So Rashi therefore doesn't say Eilu hamuchunasin, that oivecha automatically means these that are gathered. But when it comes to V'yanusu misanecha, Rashi says Eilu haroitim. What does he mean by this? A soinei is someone that's constantly roidev, constantly searching and looking and pursuing and chasing after the yidden, trying to harm them. That's what Rashi means with eilu haroitim. Or in the word soinei itself, it means that he's chasing after you. After saying this in the first Rashi, so Rashi now goes on and says, if this is the way we understand what a soinei is, so now we need to understand what this means by Hashem. How is it possible that someone could be misanecha towards Hashem? How is it possible that someone can have such a tremendous hate towards Hashem? For someone to be an enemy, oyev, which means, as we said before, it's more about the practical, what he's doing, that could sometimes happen against Hashem. Sometimes a person wants to do something that's opposite of the will of Hashem, and he cannot control himself, or he doesn't want to control himself, so he's rebelling against Hashem. He's doing something opposite of Hashem's ratzon, and that's a certain concept of eva, of being an enemy. But how is it possible for someone to hate Hashem in such a way that we're saying that he's constantly in this motion of chasing after, accomplishing this, etc., etc.? And now we come back to why Rashi uses this expression, Misha Amar V'hoya Ha'olam. Hashem is the one that with his words he created the world. A person that realizes that Hashem created the world and is giving him life, how is it even possible that he can be chasing after and looking and to express this hate in every possible way and have such a deep hate towards Hashem? And this is why Rashi answers, Misanecha elu soinei Yisrael. These are the ones that hate the Yidden. That wherever we say the word Misanecha, the moment you're saying someone hates Hashem, it means it's because he's hating the Yidden. In other words, it's not possible really to have such a hate towards Hashem. Rather, it means that he hates the Yidden, and therefore, that itself is hating Hashem. Now the Rebbe turns to the Chassidus, to the Yeina Shel Torah within this Rashi. And the Rebbe says, first of all, that a very similar pasuk we have to this one of our Pasha, Kumu Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha v'nus misanecha mipanecha, we have in Tehillim, where there it says, Yakum Eloikim, yafutzu oiva v'yanusu misanav mipanev. So it's the same idea, but there the pasuk is using the term Eloikim. The Rebbe says, all in all, that means we have, in our pasuk, we have the term Kumu Havaya, the Shem Havaya. In the pasuk in Tehillim, it's Yakum Eloikim, the Shem Eloikim. And what Rashi is discussing, and he's describing Hashem as Misha Amar V'hoya Ha'olam. And the Rebbe wants to discuss this difference. In order to explain this, the Rebbe says, why generally is our pasuk referring to the enemies of the Yidden over here as Oivecha and Misanecha, that they're your enemies, Hashem, they're the ones that hate you? Because we're speaking about a situation where the Yidden are lacking in their avodah. They're not perfect. They're not doing the best and the right things. And therefore, the salvation to the Yidden is not coming so much because of the avodah of the Yidden, but it's mainly coming because that these people that are starting up for the Yidden are the enemies of Hashem. They hate Hashem. And that's, in other words, what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying in this pasuk is, when he says, Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu evecha, etc., is that if Goyim are going to see that they could start up Rahman al-Islam with Yidden, and Yidden are Hashem's treasured nation, the Eibishter's children, etc., and Hashem is not helping them, then it's a chilul Hashem. It's the desecration of Hashem's holy name. The Goyim are not thinking about, and they don't care whether the Yidden are complete in Torah mitzvahs, not complete in Torah mitzvahs. They know that the Yidden are children of Hashem, and therefore, if the Yidden can be hurt, this is a desecration of Hashem's name. Says the Rebbe, this is what the Tefillah Kumo Havaya V'Yafutzu Eivecha is coming to say. In order that the enemies should in fact be scattered and run away, etc., what needs to be brought out is that very, very deep connection that Yidden have with Hashem, that absolutely nothing in the world could weaken that, nothing in the world could get in the way of that. And as the famous expression that Lachlifam B'Uma Acheres, Hashem says that I cannot change them for another nation. Because it's what's being revealed, is what's coming to the fore, is that whoever hates the Yidden is hating Hashem. Yidden and Hashem are one thing. How is this accomplished? How do we reach to this deep level? The Pasuk says, Kumo Havaya. Havaya, the Shem Havaya is a name of Hashem that's associated already with the creation of the world. So in other words, there might be the idea of Avodah is relevant and so on. Kuma Havaya, or rise Havaya, means that there should be an Aliyah going up higher than the Shem Havaya, higher than the Seder Ishtashlos, a place where there's that purest bond and love from the Eibishter and Yidden. Now in order for practically from this high level to come down all the way that into this world that the Goyim should practically scatter. So in this itself, there's a number of stages. And this is the three ideas that we spoke about, the names of how Hashem is being referred to over here. In Chumash, which is the main part of Torah Shebeksav, so where the shoyrish, the root of every single thing is shining, here it says, Kumo Havaya. The level of Havaya is being lifted up, and this is going to be the source of, as we said, that the deepest expression of Hashem's connection to the Yidden is going to come out. Then we come to Tehillim, and there the name Elokim is used. Tehillim, although it's Torah Shebeksav, but it means already it's being drawn down to a lower level. So we're taking this very, very high idea, which is higher than Seder Ishtalshalus, and is going to be drawn down now into the next level, down into Shem Elokim. And finally, in Torah Shebaal Peh, which is coming down all the way to a person down here in this world. Here we're using the word Misha Amar v'Hoya Olam. We're speaking already about how the world is. Hoya Olam, there's a word Olam, it's the word Helen v'Hester. And yet even in this world, it's felt over here, this idea of this greatest level of Elikus, where Hashem is beyond all of the limitations and has this deep level of love to the Eibishter. And as a result of that, all of the Oivim and all of the Soinim are completely scattered and chased away, and Hashem doesn't take any of these calculations of the avodah of the Yidden, etc., and He immediately brings the Gula Amitas V'Ashleima through Mashiach Tzidkeinu b'Meir of Yameinu Mamash.